6:30 a.m. this morning, the long-awaited 309-page Clarity Act markup was just released, and we're going to show you the most important parts that we found in it. Obviously, it was just dropped, so I don't think anyone has enough time to really break down everything in it, but we'll tell you as much as we know, because there are some very big wins in this that everyone's talking about, but there's also probably some potential threats buried inside this. It does feel like there's some crypto stuff that maybe we're not all too happy about. But before we get into that, let's start with the positives, okay? So we're going to start with the positives here, and then we'll break down more of the maybe not so good portions of this. Obviously, as we know, as we've been covering for months here, there has been many compromises to get this Clarity Act markup through the Senate Banking Committee. And to my surprise, it seems to be very close to getting over the finish line, which I was very pessimistic about. I really thought we wouldn't even get this close, but hey, I'll take my L's here. Anyways, I'm not alone here. I do have Kent, and Nico is with me today, so we got a full packed house today, but let me get into the initial kind of breakdown here. So, as we know, actually, I'll start with this one. We got the U.S. Senate Banking Committee, GOP, of course. They pushed through the markup. So here's what they tweeted. The Senate Banking Committee's Clarity Act is the result of more than 10 months of good faith bipartisan negotiations and has benefited from consultation with industry participants, legal and academic experts, and key stakeholders. And here are the facts. I will break down the Senate banking kind of fact sheet, but before I get to that, here's Senator Cynthia Lummis, the Bitcoin senator. And she goes, big week for digital assets. After nearly a year of bipartisan work, this markup brings us one step closer to cementing America's place as the global leader in financial innovation. Wyoming showed the way. Now Washington is following. So again, it's 309 pages. I don't think as an industry we have had enough time to really nitpick every portion of this, but the timeline, actually, let me give you guys a timeline, at least the expected timeline here. So we got the Senate Agricultural Committee markup portion of the Clarity Act already. That's already done. That was months ago, maybe a month or two ago. We've been waiting on the Senate Banking Committee's markup portion of the Clarity Act, which is what we have here today. That was released last night. They have until tomorrow to add amendments to it. It will get voted on Thursday. I don't have the official time for when that vote will happen, but for the next 24 hours, we will be seeing amendments. I'm sure we will start to see people coming out either for, against. All that's going to happen this week. And then it will go for a final Senate vote where they basically take the Senate Agricultural Committee side of the Clarity Act markup bill, the Senate Banking Committee, they will combine that. Then that will get voted through. Still, obviously, a lot to go on whether the Clarity Act will become law. But the timeline is, or at least this is the expectation from the Trump administration, if it does get past Senate, a full Senate vote, then July 4th is kind of the ETA, maybe the timeline date that we're all shooting for, that the Clarity Act will be signed into law by President Trump. So that's the timeline here. Wednesday, today and tomorrow for amendments, Thursday vote. And then after that, I think they're kind of shooting for maybe a June vote in the Senate, potentially signed into law by President Trump July 4th. At least that's what we're seeing on social media. Anyways, going through the Senate Banking Committee's fact and fiction list here. Won't read the whole thing. We'll kind of glaze over some of this, and I do have a lot of tweets of people that have read portions of the bill, some things to be, I guess, maybe worried about, looking to.
The thing that I'm most focused on, and I brought this up before, also shout out to Kent, CEO of SazMining, and go switch to your shot, Opti. Look at that sexy Saz hat behind Opti. Anyways, the thing that I'm the most focused on, Opti, is how it relates to Bitcoin, and that's the bullish part.
And yes, that's all we really care about. To be honest, that's really all we care about. Anyways, here we go. Okay, so again, if you want this, it's on banking.senate.gov. You can read the whole breakdown. If you really want to get into the weeds, you can read the 309-page report or markup bill. But here we go. Fact: the Clarity Act protects everyday Americans. I mean, obviously, that's probably why they're doing this and why that's the first thing on this list. Anyways, bottom line, Americans deserve transparency, fairness, and accountability regardless of the technology involved. Fact: the Clarity Act cracks down on fraud and money laundering. Bottom line, the bill closes significant gaps in fraud and money laundering while preserving marketplace integrity. And then now we're going into the kind of myths and their rebuttals. So, myth: the bill deviates from security law and would provide fewer investor protections and compliance obligations for digital asset securities. Fact: this claim is false. Going further, the bill puts banks, taxpayers, and the financial system at risk. Fact: the real risk is the status quo. Clarity Act establishes a clear regulatory framework that holds bad actors accountable for fraud, manipulation, and abuse, and is designed to prevent another FTX-style collapse. Interesting verbiage here coming from the Senate Banking Committee. Moving further, the bill creates loopholes for evasions of U.S. rules. Fact: the bill closes regulatory gaps. The bill fails to address illicit finance and national security risk. Well, the bill establishes strong enforceable protections against illicit finance and national security threats. Going further, the bill enables illicit finance to occur through decentralized finance, aka DeFi trading protocols. Fact: the bill does the opposite. The bill criminalizes software developers or bans self-custody, and this is one of the big things that we have talked about here on the show. From what I've saw in the bill, it in fact explicitly protects software developers who publish, maintain, or contribute to code without controlling customer funds, and it preserves Americans' ability to hold their own digital assets. At the same time, the bill makes clear that these protections do not shield fraud, illicit finance. Hold on. Sorry, guys, I'm choking on my saliva here. Illicit finance or other misconduct, giving regulators targeted authority to address real risks without sweeping in lawful software development. Myth: the bill was written by industry and serves industry interests. Fact: the bill has been shaped by years of bipartisan work, extensive engagement with regulators and law enforcement, and a focus in public interest outcomes. Bottom line, the Clarity Act replaces uncertainty with clear rules of the road. It protects investors, strengthens national security, preserves lawful innovation, and gives regulators and law enforcement the tools to go after fraud, manipulation, sanctions evasions, and illicit finance. Okay, so that's the overall breakdown of it. Obviously, we didn't break down exactly what is in the bill per se. This is just the overview here, and this is where I will go into a little more specifically on things that people have touched on Twitter and that have come to light. Specifically, I thought Nico was trying to chime in here. Specifically, I saw Zach Shapiro, who works at the Bitcoin Policy Institute, and this is one of the big portions here, and this is one of the points of contention that I've seen on Twitter. So we saw him tweet, "The BCR edit looks benign to me. The new carve-out requires, quote, specific intent to transfer funds you know are criminal. This should not capture devs who build neutral privacy tech that gets misused by criminals without evidence of actual intent to aid those criminals," which it is a big move here in regards to what's going on. Though there is a little bit of contention on this point on Twitter, particularly I believe it's Keon Williams' wife. She tweeted about this, and then this is partially where you're starting to see maybe some pushback on Twitter. So we have Free Samurai account go. Seems like that can easily be misused. Goes, if someone builds a tool that large-scale self-custody and totally private, then they already know that absolutely anyone can download and abuse that tool against their best intentions. Zach Shapiro responds, "That's not how it works. According to this language, they would have to specifically intend to transfer known criminal funds. In order to be liable, mere knowledge is not enough." And then they go, "I sure hope that's right." They start tagging his wife, of course, the Samurai Dev's wife, who's currently in jail, and says, "You may..."
The Samurai Wallet developers is
what
in
I
jail.
say? Sorry, Samurai Wallet Dev's what? Developer's wife. Yes. This is where she gets tagged because she did have a post on here.
Just to clarify, she's not in jail. Her
She is-
husband
yes,
is in
yes,
jail
yes.
because
Sorry,
he's a
sorry,
Samurai
sorry.
developer, and then she's been a huge advocate for him
Yes,
outside
100%.
of jail.
100. Thank you. I can't speak today. Anyways, here we go. So it goes, you may want to take a look at Lauren Emily recent post. So I will pull, or did I pull that up? I'll pull that up for you guys here. And this is what she said. Here we go. This is the one that was going out. So TFTC tweeted, buried on page 230 of the Clarity Act, is arguably the biggest win for the digital assets industry in the entire 309-page bill. Section 604, the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act. If you build open source blockchain software and don't have unilateral control over users' funds, you are not a money transmitter. Not under FinCEN rules, not under federal criminal law, not under state registration requirements. Writing code does not equal money transmission.
Okay. And this is where I'm going to chime in, right? And this is where, like, you know, guys, we have to keep putting the pressure on the Trump administration. And remember, we have all the rights to put the pressure on the Trump administration, because you can make a very good argument that it was the Bitcoin community that got Trump over the finish line and got him elected in the first place, not to mention the amount of donations the Bitcoin and crypto community gave to the Trump administration, not to mention the fact that Bitcoin Magazine did give him a massive stage at Bitcoin 2024. So, you know, I know that I never saw that journalist back in the White House again, but there was a journalist that did ask Trump, and Trump was in the Oval Office, hey, listen, are you going to pardon the Samurai Wallet developers? And Trump wisely said, Pam, we should take a look at that. Well, guess what, guys? Pam is no longer the Attorney General of the United States. It's someone else now. So we have to keep putting on the pressure, and we have to do it before the midterms, because I think after the midterms it's going to be a lot harder. Now, the good news is, and again, this isn't about Republican or Democrat. I don't care about right or left. I'm a single issue voter, but I will support the parties that are pro Bitcoin and pro crypto. I will not support the parties that are anti-crypto, anti-Bitcoin. That being said, it isn't monolithic, right? There are Democratic senators and there are Democratic representatives that have gone across the aisle and supported Bitcoin / crypto regulation. So I do want to specify with that. But what I will say is, so they're passing this law that basically says that, hey, the Samurai developers, they didn't really do anything wrong, because at the end of the day, the Samurai Wallet developers, they created an application of which they didn't have access to users' funds. And the law is basically saying those developers shouldn't be held responsible for that. So it's like they charged the Samurai developers basically on something that wasn't into law. Now there's law that's being passed that specifically protects the Samurai Wallet developers. That doesn't make that, the math ain't math in there, right? So the Samurai Wallet developers and the Tornado Cash developer as well, but more so the Samurai Wallet developers, because of, you know, the Bitcoin focused aspect of it, those they should be let free at this point, specifically if this bill gets passed. And another thing that I want to say before I pass it back on to Opti, because I know there's other Bitcoin stuff related, is I do want to give a shout out to Senator Lummis, because all of this pro Bitcoin legislation and all this pro Bitcoin language really is coming out of her office. Like, she is really moving this forward. Of course, shout out to the Bitcoin Policy Institute. Shout out to the work done by Dennis Porter and the Satoshi Action Fund. Again, the think tanks behind all of this policy. But, you know, again, the Samurai Wallet guys should be let free, because they're passing a law that specifically says, hey, what they did isn't illegal. Because ultimately what the Samurai Wallet developers did was that they created an application, right? They created software. Are they responsible for people using it for criminal activity. Now, it didn't help that the Samurai Wallet developers were active on Twitter and, you know, kind of trolling and saying all of these things.
Well, that would be the key contention with this law. That is the gray area of this.
That didn't really help their case, right? You know, they were poking the bear, so to speak. But at the same time, ultimately, what did they do? They created a piece of open source software of which they didn't have control over the funds, and criminals decided to use that open source software for criminal activity. If you're going to use that argument, and by the way, this has been tried, but it hasn't fully been passed because of the Second Amendment protections. It's like holding gun manufacturers liable for crimes that people use with guns. Ultimately, the gun didn't commit the crime. It's the human being that used the gun to commit the crime. So if you apply that same logic to this, it's like, how can you hold developers responsible for using open source code? I mean, developing open source code and then criminals using open source code. How could you hold those developers responsible? And then I'm going to tie it all in with this. If that argument were to be true, then you could see how that's a very slippery slope into Bitcoin. Because you know what Bitcoin is? Open source software. Do criminals use Bitcoin? Of course, right? Of course criminals use Bitcoin. But if you want to know why Satoshi ultimately disappeared, and he disappeared into the ether, and he didn't want to be a public face, this is precisely why. This is precisely why. So this is a big, big win for open source developers. This is a big, big win for Bitcoin. But I have to say the poly market odds did go down significantly once this language was released. Once this language was released, the poly market odds went from, I think it was like 70-something percent.
It's almost 75.
75
I didn't
or
check it this morning.
76%. It's gone down to 60%. And another thing that I'll add as well is that 4th of July deadline is so symbolic because that is the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. Again, it's in the national anthem. This is supposed to be the home of the free, right? Home of the brave, land of the free. And again, with this type of regulations or this type of lawfare that happened under the previous administration, was it really the land of the free? And I'll add another argument to that. Listen, I think as long as there's a central bank and as long as, you know, governments act as this kind of like middleman for money, they control the flows of money, they get to arbitrarily pick and choose, you know, what money flows are okay and what money flows are not okay, right? And this is why Bitcoin is so powerful, because it's censorship resistant. Nobody makes the rules. It's rules without rulers. It's censorship resistant money, right? So I'm really, really glad that's being mentioned in the legislative aspect, because not only does this protect the Samurai potential open source software developers in the future, but this most importantly protects Bitcoin software developers in the future, because you can see how them setting the precedent with Samurai could lead to that slippery slope and saying, hey, listen, you're a Bitcoin software developer, and Iran just mentioned that they're going to accept, you know, Bitcoin payments for the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know what the situation is. I don't know what the latest update is on that, but you could see how that was going to be a very slippery slope. So if this gets signed into the legislation, they can no longer use that argument, at least here in the United States of America. And that in and of itself is a massive win.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Okay, let me rewind a little bit, and I know, Kent, sorry, this one's gonna be a little. We got a lot to cover here, so I will let you chime in here. But the TLDR of this TFTC post, and then I'll bring up the controversy, and then I'm just gonna give you kind of like the best overview that we got here. It's like a, you know, Claude Reddit, and here's like the key takeaways of it. But anyways, back to this tweet. For years, developers have operated under the threat that publishing code could expose them to money transmission charges. Section 604 eliminates that ambiguity entirely. It establishes a clear codified legal protection for the people who actually build the open source infrastructure this industry runs on. Now, going back again to the big contention here. Here is the Samurai Wallet dev that is currently in jail's wife. This is her tweet. And she goes, there's a major flaw in the BRCA of the proposed Clarity Act. Clarification of treatment explicitly states that the protections in subsection C do not extend to or modify the application of 18 U.S.C. 1960 B1C for a specific subset of conduct by an initial person. 18 U.S.C. 1960 prohibits operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. Subsection B1C covers cases involving the transportation or transmission of funds that the defendant knows are 1. derived from a criminal offense, proceeds of fraud, drug trafficking, etc., or intended to be used to promote or support unlawful activity, e.g. funding terrorism or further crimes. This is the exact 1960 subsection now being used to target developers. Every builder and developer knows their tool could be used for nefarious purposes. Under this law, that knowledge alone is enough to send you to prison for years. There is no protection for developers in the Clarity Act while this carve-out remains. So that's the big contention. Now, going back to the initial post, Zach Shapiro goes, unfortunately, this would not fix the law in a backward-looking way. The Samurai guys need a pardon to get released early, but this should stop future Samurai wallet-type prosecutions from happening. So, again, the big contention is this idea of consciously knowing that your product is being used by criminals and you being aware of that, which as it stands now, the Samurai Wallet devs would not be able to have like a retroactive, get out of jail free card, because that was kind of the big contention that they were marketing it, quote, for, at least this is how the court sees it, criminal activity. That is the big contention here from the Clarity Act about protecting open source developers. Now, doing a more broad breakdown here, again, it's 309 pages. We haven't been able to break down everything in this, but from the key takeaways that I got from this, it is basically this. Let me full screen myself for you guys. So the CFTC jurisdiction is locked in by statute. The bill defines digital commodity and network token via amendments to the Commodity Exchange Act and explicitly treats them as non-securities. Bitcoin sails through every test, intrinsically linked to a distributed ledger, no issuer, no profit sharing rights, years of SEC ambiguity, and on day one, self-custody is federally protected. Keep Your Coins Act, that's what it's called. No federal agency may prohibit, restrict, or otherwise impair a U.S. individual's ability to self-custody using a self-hosted wallet for any lawful purpose. Hardware wallets, multi-sig, and node running are explicitly shielded though the Bank Secrecy Act and AML still applies to intermediaries. There is a no U.S. retail CBDC. The bill amends the Federal Reserve Act to bar Fed banks from offering products directly to individuals and prohibits CBDC use for monetary policy, eliminates, of course, Bitcoin's most feared state competitor. The banks can now custody and transact in Bitcoin, unlocking institutional rails. There is, of course, that bankruptcy protection, specifically mentioning FTX and Celsius, which is obviously something that we're barely getting out of. And then, of course, the developer and non-custodial safe harbor. So protecting Bitcoin core devs, Lightning operators, and miners from being deemed money transmitters. Now, of course, the big contention throughout this whole saga of the Senate Banking Committee getting the Clarity Act markup through was the no yield on payment stablecoins. So as the bill stands now, basically, you are not going to be able to gain yield on your stable coins if they're just sitting in a stablecoin account. Now they're calling it like a reward usage system here. So like if you're using the stablecoin, then you can get rewards. That is still one of the big contentions here. Obviously, there will be tougher Bank Secrecy Act and AML on centralized exchanges and DeFi front ends. But with this all being said, as we can see from this point, until we can get a full breakdown of the 309 pages of the Clarity Act markup from the Senate Banking Committee, this is starting to look like actually the most bullish U.S. legal regime that Bitcoin has ever had. So it is a big move that we are seeing here. Again, it's still a little early. We haven't been able to break down all 309 pages. I'm sure we will see some stuff that pops up that is concerning. There is a lot of like crypto language here. Some of the shit coins do get some pretty favorable coverage in this. But first of all, self-custody protected. You know, open source developers protected. It's honestly a little better than I thought it was going to be. I'm not going to lie.
So, and this is, and that part doesn't surprise me. That the biggest gripe that I had with this, ladies and gentlemen, was always like, it was unfortunate that the Bitcoin side of the legislation had to be grouped into this massive crypto bill, because if the Bitcoin side of the legislation was being passed in and of itself, it would have been passed a long time ago. But the way that the US legislative system works is you kind of just have to pass this massive bill all in one time, and that's,
and also
and that's what slowed things down.
Yeah, and part of that I forgot to mention, there is like a housing bill embedded in here.
They always do this.
Yeah, exactly.
So before I pass it on to Kent, let me give you guys one more high level overview, which Fred Krueger actually did a pretty good job at doing this. He tweeted about it yesterday, just to do one last breakdown of everything. And this tweet did go pretty viral, got 2,100 likes. So my take on Clarity Act, and he says my take.
Claude's take,
right? Everyone's relying on Claude. Claude could be just bullshitting us the entire time. But anyhow, so here are the four takeaways, and then I'm going to shut up and I'm going to pass it on to Kent. First one, for Bitcoin, very bullish, self-custody explicitly protected. Big win. Clear legal framework for lending, wrappers, banks could go nuts. Very bullish. For number go up, and also for self-custody. For DeFi, don't really care. For stable coins, bullish, but yield-bearing coins get heavily restricted. Banks win. I mean, this was the make or break for banks, and I've been telling you guys for the last couple of weeks why I was the make or break for banks. I'm not going to repeat myself. Number 4. And then I'm going to pass it on to Kent. For crypto/Bitcoin companies, very bullish. U.S. companies building truly decentralized protocols are fine. Products can start out more centralized and decentralized to comply. This would start being enforceable in summer of 2027. Kent, you've been coming on the show for a long time now, man. You're a regular at this point, and we've been talking about this topic a lot, right? So what are your latest thoughts about the recent status, the current status of the Clarity Act, now that the language has finally been made public? And Opti, if I saw the time correctly, did they release the language at midnight?
Yeah, I saw. Well, actually, guys, I passed out early. I actually got a good night's rest. But
that makes one of us.
Yeah, Eleanor Terrett tweeted this at 12:22 a.m. last night. So yeah, it came out at midnight.
Wow. Again, why midnight? Anyways, Kent, what are your thoughts?
Because they didn't want anyone to read it.
Kent, what are your thoughts on all this, brother?
Oh man, you guys really set me up here. I would love to have a hot take for your audience.
Absolutely.
I think I've been trying to think of one, and what just keeps coming to my mind as you guys have been talking is everything's good for Bitcoin, right? Like you guys are talking, I'm living outside the US, so I'm looking from the outside into the fishbowl of the US when I'm having this conversation, and from somebody that's living outside the US and works in the US economy, like it doesn't really matter, actually, this bill. In the long scheme of things, yes, it will hasten up the capital flows coming into Bitcoin from Americans and the access to the capital markets. But is that necessary for Bitcoin to win in the long tail of time here? And I don't think it is. So I don't actually think it matters. What I do think it matters is it helps number go up. And number go up eventually does help freedom go up. So that's how I look at it from the vantage point. I do like the carve outs for the developers. I don't like Zach Shapiro's should protect developers. If you read that tweet, he said it should protect. Generally, anytime there's a should when it comes to legal, that gets challenged in court, and then a lawyer gets to decide. And at the end of the day, I think probably the most worrisome thing I have about government meddling in all of this is there's probably some sort of Wall Street backdoor to attack Bitcoin in here that we can't see coming, that will wind up coming. And actually, so this is going to be the super contrarian take, is I actually think we need Wall Street to attack Bitcoin. And I think we need that attack to occur for Wall Street to then realize when it fails, that Bitcoin is truly outside of sovereign control and nobody controls it, and therefore we can deploy our capital into it because it's truly safe. So that's kind of my long-winded take on this actually being good for Bitcoin in general. Is that there's, you know, anytime you have 309 frigging pages of legislation, it's not all going to be good for Bitcoin, boys. And Bitcoin just got stapled together with crypto here, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we got some provisions that are good for us. I promise you there's some provisions in there that we're not going to like after the fact. And once they're in legislation, it means now we got to go through the court system to get it changed, because an act of Congress is probably harder to do than to change the 10 commandments at this point. So, you know, there's be careful what you wish for, I guess. And let's see what happens. The good news is the Bitcoin adoption doesn't just have to happen in the US for Bitcoin to win. And so I think this advances things in positive ways, and probably like climbing a sand dune, you know, we go up a step and slide back half a step. And I on the Samurai wallet devs, it is an absolute travesty that those folks are in jail. And my comment on that particular issue is that I think that it is completely punitive and a sign of a political class that is much more like the Hunger Games at this point. And it's a punitive judgment on some of the comments they made attacking the system pretty blatantly and openly than it is about freedom of speech and their right to code. I think that's why those guys are in jail. And I can't prove that, but that's my take, because it doesn't make any sense. It's not a legally viable position. And the way that the courts have operated towards them has been absolutely a travesty of law. So I'm not for it, and I wish that this would help them get out of jail.
Complete alignment there. And Kent, you know, you say it's contrarian, but I completely agree with all of this. I think, and there's a couple points I want to touch on. So first of all, I think that this bill is more for the benefit of the United States rather than for the benefit of Bitcoin. Like, you know, Trump said it best. Like, if we don't get ahead of this, other countries will. Right. So, you know, and going back to the Wall Street comment, which I think was very on point, right, which is Wall Street is going through this process right now of essentially trying to co-opt Bitcoin, right? Whether they're doing it knowingly, unknowingly, whether they're playing, you know, paper Bitcoin games and all that stuff. But as Max Kaiser's famous quote always goes, you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. And as Kent mentioned, this is an inevitable stress test that Bitcoin had to go to, right? And I think the last stress test that Bitcoin is going to have to go to, which is what we all wish for as Bitcoiners, is the separation of money and state, which is really going to be Bitcoin versus the central banks, right? But now it's Wall Street up first to bat. Now, Bitcoin has lived through so many stress tests in its life. So, of course, you know, the block size wars, the infamous China mining ban, where 50% of the hash rate literally dropped offline within 9 months. The hash rate recovered and decentralized in the process. So Bitcoin has been in these situations before, and what ends up happening is that Bitcoin becomes stronger for it. And as Max Kaiser always says, Bitcoin is meant to be attacked. And the more you attack Bitcoin, the stronger it gets. And not only Bitcoin, but the Bitcoin community. We're so used to being attacked. Most of our lifetime in Bitcoin, we've been attacked. It really wasn't until the Trump administration that we really had a change of winds in terms of the regulatory environment. It really wasn't until the approval of the spot Bitcoin ETF that we had a change in heart by Larry Fink. It wasn't really until Michael Saylor got involved on the public company level in 2021 with the Bitcoin Treasury strategy announcement at the conference here in Miami that we really had a change from the public company side of things. So now Bitcoin is being integrated into the traditional financial system. And I think the question on everybody's minds, as Kent has said, is Wall Street going to co-opt Bitcoin? And I'll drop a couple data points for you guys, right? So for the first time in Bitcoin's history, we actually have seen less people taking Bitcoin into self-custody since the launch of the ETF. Why? Because of convenience. And I'll go out on a limb and I'll say Bitcoin fails if a big portion of the community is not taking Bitcoin into self-custody. Bitcoin fails. If Bitcoin is just this centralized thing, then you're going to have a 2.0 type, gold 2.0 type of situation, right? They co-opted gold. The way that they did that is because of the centralization of the custody of gold because of its physical characteristics. What makes Bitcoin different is two things. Bitcoin's absolute scarcity, so you can only pay paper gains for so long. And number two is the fact that Bitcoin is the ultimate bearer asset, right? The fact that you can take self-custody of your Bitcoin by writing down a 12-word seed phrase, or you can have hardware devices like we recommend the BitKey that are seedless and they have multi-sig built in, inheritance built in, and all of that good stuff. Again, there are so many good solutions for you depending on your technical level or what you want to get out of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is different things to everybody, that you should have no excuse at this point, if you're watching Simply Bitcoin in 2026, to have Bitcoin in self-custody, because that ultimately is the revolution. So to go back to Kent's point, this is very bullish from a number go up perspective, but it's important that people don't lose their perspective on what are we trying to achieve here? What is the ultimate goal with Bitcoin, right? It's the separation of money and state. You're not going to do that through the legislative process. To quote Hayek, you have to find a clear roundabout way. That's the way you do it. And what is that clear roundabout way? It's Bitcoin in self-custody, and it's transacting peer to peer. Amen. That's it. Kent, passing it back on to you. As a Bitcoin entrepreneur that has built a successful business, you have to interact with the United States. From a regulatory perspective, what's your opinion on this bill? Because I'm assuming that it is going to make business a little bit easier, at least from an investor's perspective, at least from no pun intended, from a clarity perspective, right? At least you're not going to find yourself potentially in an Operation Choke Point 3.0. What are your opinion on that? Are you still bearish? Are you still thinking, hey, Nico, you're right. Maybe we're reading this, on the surface level, there's all these good things for Bitcoin, but I'm sure buried on page 269, there's this small provision that, isn't so bullish. So what's your take on that, Ken?
Well, I certainly haven't had the chance to comb through all 309 pages, so I've been rapidly typing on the keyboard on the side, if you guys are seeing that, to talk to my AI agent named Claude to give me some talking points here. And I think that there's a couple of things that are worth pointing out here by what is not included in this bill that I think sets the stage for that attack we're talking about, or the Wall Street way of, hey, we're going to co-opt this. One of those things is there's no explicit privacy protection. There's no protection that your Bitcoin can't be confiscated in the future. So, the 6103 situation that happened in 1933. So this could be a great funnel into the ETFs for a lot of people. So exactly what you're saying, amen, brother, like not your keys, not your coins, take custody. So I think that is a risk if everybody comes in through these ETFs and allows their Bitcoin to be custodied by others, because there is no explicit protections for your Bitcoin in these custody vehicles that prohibits future confiscation. There's no prohibition on transaction level surveillance. There's no carve out for non-KYC peer-to-peer commerce. And, those things are risks. Our business, we've been able to operate, and I don't know, maybe this does impact our business. I don't think it does, but the ability for our business to be in a position where we sell a product and we manage that product on your behalf makes us property managers of sorts. And that has left us in a place where we don't have to come in and do all the rigmarole that you have to with an exchange, right, for identification. And we've loved that. So it's been a great way for people to acquire Bitcoin through mining, which is the way Satoshi designed the network, right? He didn't design the network to go buy your Bitcoin. He designed the network so you acquire your Bitcoin through mining it. And, if there's changes here to the ability for us to manage your property in that same way, then that could impact us. The biggest thing, though, is on the front end, it absolutely is going to let the capital flow. So I am expecting a pickup in business. I just am hoping that doesn't come at the cost of privacy, right? Because I think that would be a walled garden of sorts. And then Bitcoin is moved from being permissionless to needing a permission slip. And I think that sucks if that's what's coming down the pike. So, you know, this is be careful what you wish for. Bitcoin will always remain sovereign and permissionless at the protocol level. It's just if people choose to interact with it at the protocol level. So my hope would be that, you know, the price pump that inevitably occurs for more capital flowing into Bitcoin will lead to more adoption. You know, people come for the monetary gains, but then they stay for the revolution, and the cohort of Bitcoiners grows as a result. And, you know, we supercharge the community and we level ourselves up by protecting the network at the next level. And I do think that the mining community is one of the best to do that, right? If you're acquiring your Bitcoin through mining it, well, guess what? You have as much skin in the game as you can possibly have with the network and protecting it and caring about these aspects of the network, because you're getting your Bitcoin directly from the network. You have to be self-custodying it by definition, or at least deciding not to, right? You're having to consciously make that choice. And so you have a feel of what's actually going on in the network. I mean, our clients are looking on a daily basis at their dashboards, like how many sats have I accumulated? What's the network difficulty going to be? I think the more of our community that is operating on the social layer, the more we're going to protect the network, and the more freedom will go up for all of us, and the less like negative type legislation will be pushed through. So anyway, Absolutely. A little bit of a shill there for why mining is the best, but I truly believe in it.
Absolutely, guys. Go check out SazMining, ladies and gentlemen. It is literally the Uber of Bitcoin mining as a service. It makes Bitcoin mining incredibly easy. These guys really focused on the tech side, and then they built the mining side after. So really, really big fans of Saz. And I do want to pull up this comment. Shout out Nathan. Like and subscribe. Comment from Saz. Like and subscribe, or we'll make Opti read a 700-page novel on air.
Well, I can read, so it's much more painful if it's Nico having to read 700 pages. All right, let's just clarify.
Oh, man. All right, guys, it's going to be an incredible show. By the way, breaking news. We're going to cover this right after the break, so you guys are going to want to stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, Senate confirms Kevin Warsh to a 14-year term on Federal Reserve Board of Governors, 51-45 vote. We're going to be talking about what is the significance of this. Ladies and gentlemen, we might have the first pro-crypto, pro-Bitcoin Fed chair in United States history. I kept telling you guys, and you guys were giving me so much heat for this, and I'm glad I stuck to my guns. Elections have consequences, ladies and gentlemen. Elections have consequences, and these midterms, they will have consequences, and the presidential election after that, it will have consequences. So again, just wanted to point that out. I'm taking my victory lap a little bit. But anyways, guys, we're going to be right back just after the break. We're going to be talking about the new Fed chairman and how it relates to Bitcoin. Today's episode is brought to you by Bitcoin Well Infinite. If you're a serious Bitcoin buyer, you've probably hit the same wall. Most platforms make you give up custody just to play by the rules. Bitcoin Well Infinite fixes that. They're North America's only publicly traded, non-custodial OTC desk listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, which means transparent operations and zero counterparty risk.
You buy Bitcoin, you take immediate control, period. For trades over $50,000, you get a dedicated executive Bitcoin advisor, competitive spread starting at 1%, and immediate delivery straight to your own wallet. No custody risk, no withdrawal fees, just institutional grade execution with full asset control. If you want to buy Bitcoin the right way, book a free consultation at bitcoinwell.com/OTC or email infinite@bitcoinwell.com.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, StampSeed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed phrases really secure? StampSeed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need for you to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates, instead of just writing them down on paper. Paper is fragile. Titanium plates are strong. Your words are actually stamped into the titanium plate with this hammer and these letter stamping tools. Once the words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and time-proof. And now you can customize your titanium seed plates. You can upload your design or logo and they will laser engrave it on the back of your seed plate, the opposite side of where the words are. Stamp your seed on StampSeed and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the stampseed.com store.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $80,450. Sats per dollar, 1,243. Block $11. Realized monetary inflation is 0.83%. Market cap is 1.61 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap is 5.36%. Percentage issued 95.37. Decline from all-time high, negative 36.2%. So right now, if you're buying Bitcoin, you're getting it at a 36% discount. All right, everybody, what is the breaking news? Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, as I said before the break, Senate confirms Kevin Warsh to 14-year term on Federal Reserve Board of Governors in 51 to 45 votes. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. So, also, I'll get to that in a second. But what is the significance of this? And there's this great crypto briefing article that talks about this. U.S. Senate to finalize nomination of Bitcoin Kevin Warsh as next Fed chair. That has been confirmed. It is finalized. Again, 50.
No, he's confirmed on the board of governors. I think tomorrow is official chair.
Thank you, Opti. Thank you for clarifying that. So the former Fed governor who called Bitcoin the new gold for people under 40. Can you believe that? Like 4 years ago, like you would have never have imagined that in your wildest dreams. That is crazy. So the former Fed governor who called Bitcoin the new gold for people under 40 is hours away from leading the world's most powerful central bank. The U.S. Senate is scheduled to vote on confirming Kevin Warsh to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors today at 3 p.m. Again, that is already that was yesterday. I'm a little bit confused. Anyways, I don't trust Kalishi, I guess.
Kalshi.
I'm thinking about Game of Thrones.
All right, so he's confirmed as a member of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. Officially a Fed governor, not yet the chair. Tomorrow, tomorrow will be the final vote.
Thank you, Opti.
To be the chair, to lead the Fed.
Okay, so thank you, Opti. Appreciate you being precise. And so what this means, and this is why everyone's here. So what this means for Bitcoin and crypto. Warsh has described Bitcoin as the new gold for people under 40, a statement that carries real weight when it comes from someone about to control the levers of U.S. monetary policy. Bitcoin's price dipped towards 75,000 following Warsh's Senate hearing. As traders digest the other half of his economic worldview, a hawkish stance on inflation, Warsh is likely to keep interest rates higher for longer than many investors would prefer, which is generally bad news for risk assets in the short term. Analysts are split on how this will play out. Some argue that a more disciplined approach to inflation could actually benefit cryptocurrencies over the longer term, since Bitcoin's appeal as an inflation hedge grows stronger when people believe the central bank is serious about protecting the dollar's purchasing power. Others worry that delayed rate cuts will keep a lid on the kind of liquidity-fueled rallies that have historically driven crypto bull markets. But I think the key part for you guys to take away here is this part right here, the new gold for people under 40. And again, this is someone that the Trump administration recommended, the Trump administration wants. So obviously you can make a pretty good assessment that this goes in line with Trump's overall policy and view on Bitcoin. And the fact that it's a 14-year term. Is that correct, Opti? 14 years?
If he's the chair. If it gets voted through tomorrow, chair, 14 years.
That is a long time. So I'm going to repeat the line, and I'm sorry, elections have consequences. And I'm going to back that up with some evidence of what would happen if the other party won the election. Check this out. Senator Warren, top Democrat on the Senate Banking Committee, opposes the GOP crypto market structure bill released late last night. This is the official statement from Elizabeth Warren. United States Senator Elizabeth Warren, ranking member of the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee, released the following statement on the Banking Republican majority's new text of crypto market structure legislation to be marked up this Thursday. This bill puts investors, our national security, and our entire financial system at risk. That is a very strong statement. You want to know where Operation Choke Point 2.0 came from? This is the type of logic that was happening, right? Remember, this is the Elizabeth Warren camp literally assassinated a bank, made that bank go out of business. I'm talking about Signature Bank, right? A lot of files have come out since then because it was a pro Bitcoin bank, right? So again, if this election did not go in our favor, Operation Choke Point 2.0 would have been accelerating at this point, and it will turbocharge Donald Trump's crypto corruption. Now, this is where, unfortunately, Bitcoiners get kind of stuck in the middle. We're like collateral damage in all of this. When Trump started releasing the meme coins, right? The Trump coin, the Melania coin, what you're doing is you're giving ammunition to your political opponents, because ultimately all those meme coins were pump and dumps. So in the reality, you don't really have a good, come back to Elizabeth Warren's claim when she's talking about, hey, listen, there's a lot of stuff that Trump has done in regards to the crypto industry that wasn't kosher. Like, you don't really have a good argument against that. Like, the meme coins were not a good look. The meme coins made the industry look bad. It made Trump look bad. If he just focused on Bitcoin, it wouldn't have given them ammunition to really fight this with. They would have had to reveal more of their incentives. Now, we have to go back in time and remember where Elizabeth Warren stands on this. And she's on tape saying this out loud. Her view of the future of money in the United States is a central bank digital currency. And she knows fundamentally that a central bank digital currency cannot coexist with a non-sovereign alternative that is rules without rulers, that is censorship resistant, because over time, people are going to pick the better money, as the free market should work, right? So anyway, she goes on to say, in just 1 year in office, the president and his family have raked in at least $1.4 billion in gains from crypto deals alone. And yet this bill stunningly includes zero provisions to prevent that. See, I don't really have an argument for that. First of all, I don't know enough about that specific claim, but I do remember the meme coins. I do remember the meme coins. I do remember Trump coin. I do remember that. It was like literally launched like a couple days before his inauguration. It was a week before
they launched too.
It's like you're giving your political opponents ammunition, and most importantly, unfortunately, most of the public doesn't differentiate between Bitcoin and crypto. They can't tell the difference between the two. And this is another unfortunate part of the Clarity Act, right? That it kind of it joins, DeFi with Bitcoin, with crypto, with stablecoin rewards. Like it all kind of bulks it together. So if you are an uninformed voter on this, if you don't have skin in the game, if you don't really care about Bitcoin or crypto or any of that stuff, you're looking at this and you're like, she kind of has a point, right? So anyways, the American people are watching. No member of the committee should support a bill that fails to stop the massive conflict of interest posed by Donald Trump and his family's crypto ventures. Now, again, that last part I will push back on, because this is very hypocritical coming from Elizabeth Warren, because some of Elizabeth Warren's largest, she's supposed to protect us from the banking system, but some of her biggest donors are the big banks themselves, right? So again, like that last part is pure hypocrisy, but that first part where she's claiming, hey, listen, the Trump administration might have had some unjust gains, like
if we're being honest here, as much as I love the Trump administration from a Bitcoiner's perspective, as much as I love the fact that he freed Ross Ulbricht, as much as I love the fact that he signed the strategic Bitcoin Reserve Act by executive order, as much as I love all the good things that he's done, simultaneously, it's like you're giving ammunition to your political opponents, and you can make a very strong bet that a lot of people got absolutely roasted by these meme coins, right? They got crushed to the point that it was so popular that I believe Javier Milei in Argentina launched his own meme coin. Like, that isn't a good look if you're trying to convince people that Bitcoin is sound money, because most people aren't tuning into Simply Bitcoin. Most people aren't reading the Bitcoin Standard. Most people think Bitcoin and crypto are one and the same. So anyways, that's my take on all that. Kent, what is your take? I'm sure you have some strong feelings as well.
Yeah, mine really mirror yours, though. And actually, I'd go a step further. I think it was single-handedly one of the biggest blunders outside of maybe Iran and what's going on there in Trump's presidency, because I think what it did is it actually drove politics in such a nasty, negative way, because everybody saw it. Whether you were in the MAGA camp and supportive of Trump and helping to get him elected, I think everybody just kind of had an ugh moment there. And then everybody that was opposed to Trump getting elected in the first place was like, see, I told you so. So I think it was just horrible all the way around. And I think largely like the passage of the Clarity Act has been hampered by that single specific point. So there's not much that I agree with on Elizabeth Warren's plate these days, but on this particular point, I do. I think she's making a valid point, and it's probably being used specifically because it is the most politically expedient point to be using, because it resonates with so many people. And I think it would have been wise to get something in there about, presidents can't use, meme coins to launder money in the future to help get this to be a more bipartisan bill. I would have liked to have seen something like that. And Claude says it truly is not in there. But I'm at the end of the day, politicians are going to grift in order to line their pockets. We see that because anybody that's making $170,000 and walking away with hundreds of millions of dollars, which is, I don't know what, the majority of all Congress people and senators at this point, it's clearly a rigged system, and the American people know this at this point. So, these types of things, I think we just have to live with, as much as they suck and we all find them repugnant. But it is weird to agree with Elizabeth Warren here, because I have been directly the victim of choke points. And in fact, just to give a very specific example, we as a company just recently signed up, and I won't disclose any names here, but we signed up for an expense management platform, right? Some place to handle your accounts payable, your accounts receivable, the bills going in, the payments that need to flow out. And along with the platform, we were supposed to get a credit card management system. That way staff, could manage their expenses, and our accounting team could manage how much people had to spend and this sort of thing, just automate, improve processes, all this. And when we signed up for this product, we were told, oh yeah, no problem. Like, get the whole kit and caboodle. Well, to get the credit card system that we were actually looking forward to, which is a major part of why we signed up for the expense management system, we had to go apply through a credit card agency. And guess what? The compliance department said, no, you guys are not a legitimate business. So here we are with a half-baked product now and trying to figure out what the heck we're going to do. And crazy. I would argue that that's a legacy issue that still is part of Operation Choke Point 2.0, because we are just baked still, even after 10 years of saying Bitcoin is not crypto, we are still lumped in with being crypto and the FTXs of the world, even though we manage clients' hardware, and that is what we do. We are not a FTX by any stretch of the word.
Yeah, completely aligned with everything that Kent just said. Opti, what's your quick take, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, I already know what Trump's response is going to be to this. $1.4 billion of profits. I thought it was higher. I'm pretty sure the numbers are higher. They're like closer to $3 billion. He's like, wait, I did way better than that. What are you talking about? So yeah, that's probably what he'd say, because Love him or hate him, he's still got some comedic genius in him. But anyways, I don't really want to talk about Elizabeth Warren too much. I want to kind of circle back to the Kevin Warsh news in general, because I think the biggest significance that we will see of Warsh being confirmed as the Fed chair tomorrow, again, the official pass through of him being, or vote on him being the chair, will happen tomorrow. I think the biggest kind of change we will see is it does definitely mark, again, if he gets confirmed as the new Fed chair, it will 100% mark a complete culture change at the Fed. Now, with that being said, I think that will be the most interesting to keep in mind this whole time. And I am kind of being reminded of the Gary Gensler being head of the SEC moment, because he was also very pro Bitcoin and crypto before he became the head of the SEC. And we all saw how that happened afterwards. It wasn't necessarily the best. I know a lot of people say it wasn't that bad. He finally got the Bitcoin ETF through, but they also had the infamous what I forget, what was it, enforcement, man, I'm blanking on what the phrasing was, but basically you had no idea what they were doing, and then they would just, you know, give you a court case or give you something, and then you have something by enforcement, I forget. Anyways, I only bring all that. I know what you're talking about. I forget what it is. Enforcement by legislation by enforcement, yes. I think it was. Okay. Yeah, so that you got to define what that is. It's basically like we had no idea what was going on, and then they'd, you know, give you a charge, and then they'd be like, okay, now this is the new law. So basically there was no official law in the books, and then they would just slap something on you, and that would be the new law. Something on you, and then but what they're trying to do, like, ultimately, like, and we covered this, by the way. We did a really good job at covering this. So essentially what they did was they started with the Tornado Cash developers. And the reason they started with it was genius what they did, to be honest. I got to give them credit where credit is due. So what they did was they started with Tornado Cash. Why did they start with Tornado Cash? They started with Tornado Cash because it wasn't a well-known mixer. It wasn't really used, right? And what they did was that, and Elizabeth Warren was part of this, they tied the usage of Tornado Cash with North Korea. Right? They said, North Korea, Tornado Cash, this breaks the Office of Foreign Asset Control. You know, it breaks their regulation. We can't have this, yada, yada, yada. So that's what they did. Then when I think it was it was Coin Center, which again is like a lobby arm in DC that's supposed to protect the Bitcoin and crypto industry. It's similar to BPI, but more focused on the crypto industry as a whole. BPI is more focused specifically on Bitcoin. Coin Center sued, and they said, listen, this is this is clearly breaking the Constitution. This is not lawful. They lost. As soon as they lost, that set a precedent. And then that gave them ammunition to go after the bigger fish, which in my opinion was always their goal. So as soon as Coin Center sued and then they lost the case, within a month, they arrested the Samurai Wallet developers. Within a month. And then the reason that I said this was so dangerous is they were setting precedents. And I kept telling you guys, you know what else is open source code? Bitcoin. Because if you look at the legal arguments, they're basically saying, hey, Samurai Wallet developers, you guys are in trouble because criminals use your open source software. Even though you didn't have access to any of the funds, you guys are responsible for this. And you could see how that leads to a very slippery slope where they could go after Bitcoin developers and say, hey, you know what? Iran just took payment in Bitcoin, and the United States government has sanctions against Iran. You facilitated those transactions. So you could see how that was a very slippery slope, right? And that was their full intention, because again, their end goal is a central bank digital currency.
Elizabeth Warren's on tape saying this. She's on the head of the Senate Banking Committee. And you guys remember all of the things that happened under Operation Choke Point 2.0. It was death by 1,000 regulatory cuts. It wasn't just one big action. It was 1,000 of them. Little minute actions trying to sabotage the industry as a whole. Right. So anyways, guys, I do.
Wait. I didn't want to go all into that. The only reason I brought up Gary Gensler in this context was just it's going to be very interesting to see if Kevin Warsh, when he becomes the Fed chair, changes his tune in regards to Bitcoin. And further, what everyone is watching in macro circles is Kevin Warsh going to do exactly what the Trump administration wants, which is, of course, lower interest rates. And then we'll get into a more, I think, explosive, not QE environment. So those are the things that I will be watching. That I think probably the most significant maybe narratives of what's going on tomorrow and what this means going down the next 14 years. Are we going to get 14 years of a Fed chair that is seemingly pro-Bitcoin? Or are we going to get 14 more years of someone that is actively, as we know, trying to protect the US dollar and maybe fighting Bitcoin? Though I don't know what a Fed chair can actually do to fight Bitcoin, but you know what, we all know that when they get into office, maybe they do get that tap on the shoulder by the suits in black, and their tune changes.
We've seen this in the past, ladies and gentlemen. Anyways, during the news segment, we are going to be covering something uber bullish. I know you guys must be surprised. Nico, bullish? Yes,
Fake
ladies. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the things have changed. And why have they changed? The amount of Bitcoin that Michael Saylor is buying just with his stretch product alone is more than the active amount of Bitcoin being mined on a weekly basis. Like, Stretch is gobbling up so much Bitcoin, and it's not only Stretch, it's other institutions. And again, this market cycle didn't peak on euphoria, it peaked on apathy. And because of that, you can make a very strong argument. That's what I'm going to try to do today, that this cycle, oh my God, I have to say it, bro. I have to say it. Stop me, Opti. This cycle might be different. This
Dude,
cycle,
you know, hey, look,
different.
It took you 4 months, but you're
This
finally
cycle
coming to my
might
side
be-
of the
this
aisle.
cycle-
Let's go.
This cycle might be different. So we're going to be talking about this bullish news right after the break. Stay tuned. I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin. Here's something most Bitcoin holders never figure out until it's too late. You're sitting on wealth you can't touch without selling. Ledin fixes that. Bitcoin-backed loans. You keep your stack, you get cash. And they just introduced their lowest rates ever. No complexity, no fine print. The larger the loan, the lower the rate. These new rates apply to all new loans, refinances, and renewals. You'll see all the rates up front before you apply. The new, lower rates come with Ledin's gold standard protection. Your Bitcoin remains custodied and is never lent out for interest. Perfect 8-year track record of keeping clients' assets safe. Auto top-ups, LTV alerts, and partial repayments to keep you in control. Repay whenever you want with zero penalties or monthly payments. Ledin's perfect $10 billion track record through every market cycle in the last 8 years speaks for itself. Don't choose between a great rate and the safety of your Bitcoin. Get both at Ledin. I want to give a shout out to our partner, Bitkey. If you already self-custody your Bitcoin, you already know the deal with hardware wallets by now. Complex setups, clumsy interfaces, and a seed phrase that can be lost, stolen, or forgotten. Bitkey fixes that. Bitkey is a multi-sig hardware wallet built by the team behind Square and Cash App. It packs a cryptographic recovery system and built-in inheritance feature into an intuitive, easy-to-use wallet with no seed phrase to sweat over. It's simple, secure, self-custody without the stress. Time named Bitkey one of the best inventions of 2024. Get 20% off at bitkey.world. That's BITKEY.world with the code SIMPLY. Buddy, I told you we had some bullish news for you guys. I do want to cover that. So first of all, why is this bullish news happening? I think, again, it's a combination of two factors. First of all, it's sailors and these institutions, this massive amount of Bitcoin that they continue to buy despite the so-called bear market conditions, right? That's
element number one. Element number two, again, is the Clarity Act, which, again, we got a lot of news regarding the Clarity Act, and we have a deadline by the Trump administration, July 4th, right? Which again would be the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. So Senator Cynthia Lummis, she has laser eyes right now. And this is her official Senate profile. She is laser focused on getting this Clarity Act across the line. This is the Bitcoin senator. Big week for digital assets. After nearly a year of bipartisan work, this markup brings us one step closer to cementing America's place as the global leader in financial innovation. Wyoming showed the way. Now Washington is following. So that's element number two. And then this leads me to a VanEck price target that originally was released on finbold.com and was reposted by Crypto News. The headline for the audio listeners is VanEck sets Bitcoin price target for the end of 2026. You guys are going to feel really bullish right now. With Bitcoin price having underperformed gold and the broader United States stock market in 2026, Matthew Siegel, the head of digital asset research at VanEck, has made a bold prediction. Quote, Bitcoin could hit 160,000 if it reclaims its all-time high relative to gold, Siegel said. The prediction analyzed by Finbold on May 12th is based on the BTC gold pair recovering to 35x, its previous peak from its current level of 17.1x. Bitcoin, Siegel highlighted that Bitcoin is cheap as it has not followed the broader U.S. stock market. Furthermore, the ratio of the U.S. stock market and the country's GDP recently rebounded to new all-time highs. As such, Siegel suggested that the Bitcoin price could easily surge beyond his target, since the prediction is pegged on the flagship coin catching up to where equities are trading. Moreover, the broader U.S. stock market rally recently entered a price discovery phase, potentially signaling the onset of a macro bull rally. So again, of course, Matthew, no one's better than their incentives. Obviously, Matthew Siegel, head of digital assets at VanEck, he's incentivized to say this, but at the same time, it is true. I mean, like, if you look, it's true, Opti. Like, you look at the stock market, it's making all-time highs. You looked at gold's like epic run. You have to ask yourself, and I think I saw, oh my God, name's slipping my mind right now. I forget about that, but, and you made me full screen. Thanks, Opti. I appreciate it. I appreciate the support.
It's called production, bro.
Appreciate and support. Just me, looking into the ether.
It's called production.
So, to weave it back in, I'll say this. Things are feeling bullish right now. I'll leave it at that. Things are feeling bullish. And my base case for you guys is what is going to happen over the next 3 months, I think, is going to determine how the cycle is going to play out. And I've been saying this has been my base case for the last couple of weeks on the show. If Bitcoin channels between 80 and 60K throughout the summer, I think there's a very high probability that we hit bottom already. And there's Nathan's trolling me in the chat. SazMining, Bitcoin peaks a day deal is live all month. Fresh pizza gets you $150 off of any rigs. $25 Papa John's gift card. Ken, is that true?
Dude, we're going all in on pizza day, bro.
Oh yeah, that's true. Okay,
it is true. It's not just a troll. No. We're going all right on pizza day.
Okay. All right. So pull that up again. Let's pivot the conversation.
Yeah. It's a good segue to get you away from you're talking yourself back from bearish land here.
Yeah, let me just say that Nico finally sees the light, and
which might not.
We'll look in hindsight.
Opti, I'm actually worried at this point that he's seen the
over.
I'm like, oh God, local top.
Nico's bullish. It's over, guys. I guess let's expect 40K again because now Nico's bullish. So.
Oh man. But yeah, Kent, I want to get your take. First of all, I mean, we're hearing the price predictions again. But how are you feeling? Are you feeling bullish or bearish?
I am. Maybe I'm getting swept up in it, but I'm getting bullish. And actually, I'm teasing. There may be a local top. I mean, pullbacks are part of the game, guys, right? Like I think you've hedged too hard, thinking we're going to range between 60 to 80K the rest of the summer. I actually am more bullish than that. I think we're setting up for, and this is part of my chart boying here. When I say this, but I think we're setting up for a bit of a run. And my take is not necessarily that this cycle is different, but that this cycle is elongated. That's my favorite word right now. It's elongated, right? Like I think we're just stretching this whole thing out.
Super cycle.
Not super cycle. I'm not going there. I'm going elongated. Stretch it out,
dude. Tomato.
All right. We'll arm wrestle over that one later. But that's my take on where things are. I think that the Clarity Act is going to lead to more capital coming in, and it's going to push number up. And I think it's going to coincide fairly well with a rotation, right? I mean, historically, Bitcoin has been seen as a risk-on asset, right, by TradFi. And so if you're looking, there's a lot of the equities are going up. People are starting to say, what can outperform? Bitcoin would be a natural take on that. I'm not saying it's a risk on asset. I'm saying this is how TradFi has historically looked at Bitcoin, right? So it would make sense for more capital to come in. It would also make more sense for capital to come in if you look at the Bitcoin to gold chart, right? Like Bitcoin actually came down and touched the exact trend line that it's touched since 2019. I think that was one of the best opportunities for gold folks to rotate into Bitcoin, and they have. I mean, it's been up since then. I don't know how much it's been up, but it's been it's been a pretty good trade if you followed that one. And so I think we're going to see that continue to trend. It just feels like, and I was on with a capital markets guy actually earlier today in investment banking, and he was agreeing with me. It just feels like the rubber band has been pulled tight right now, and it's about ready to snap and pop up. Because nobody's expecting it. My biggest argument for why it's a good time to be bullish if you're a Bitcoiner is because the disbelief that everybody has that numbers going up here from TradFi, not the Bitcoin community. Me and Opti have been sniffing out this one for a long time. Nico, I'm happy you're on the bullish train now, but the TradFi bros are not. And that disbelief by TradFi bros is why I think we go up.
I love it.
Well, I am actually feeling the disbelief that this rally is real, which is like, I can't tell if it's the end of the, like climbing back up out of the bear market, or is this like the final end of the bear market? So I am actually feeling a little bit of disbelief right now, but I have been incredibly bullish throughout this whole time. I've been saying for a while that I think things have changed. I don't want to say that this time is different, because obviously we're always wrong when we say that. But I've been showing you guys a data point on the show, at least my thinking throughout. Like, I've been very transparent on my thinking throughout this whole time. If you look at the on-chain metrics, if you look at the narratives, institutions are very obviously driving the price action right now of Bitcoin, which to me is a signal that things are changing, that we are entering a new era. And I've been showing you guys my chart boying, what levels I've been looking at. I think if we break into or above the 85 range, we might be making a very quick move all the way up into the 95K range. And if that happens, I think every bear case is completely invalidated, and you don't want to be sitting there at 95K and being like, we're still in a bear market. You don't want to be at 95K like, oh no, it's going to come down more. So like this area we're watching, Nico's range of 80 to 60, like I'm more looking at where we currently are right now, like in this 80 to 85K range. If we don't break up above the 85K range, then I would agree with what Ken's saying. We'll probably expect one more dip, and then it's, off to the races, in my opinion. But if we do break above 85K, it might, turbocharge back up to 95K. So it's a very interesting time in terms of the price action right now. I think we are all feeling a little bit of disbelief. We're unsure if we're like, are we climbing out of this bear market? Are we going to go higher? Are we going to dump one more time? I think that is the prevailing view right now with everyone watching what's going on in the price action.
Absolutely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we still have tons to cover. We're going to be talking about wild sats. We're going to be talking about SazMining, Bitcoin mining as a service. And of course, we have the CEO and co-founder joining us on the show today, Kent. And also, I want to ask him a little bit of a mining update. What's going on in the Bitcoin mining industry as a whole? So we're going to be right back just after the break in just a little bit. I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technologies. Fueled by clean energy, HIVE has quadrupled its global Bitcoin mining footprint and channels that same scale into high-performance compute, where their AI cloud is now ranked #1 in the world for network performance. At HIVE, you've got dual engines, Bitcoin and AI humming, roaring, accelerating in unison. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable digital infrastructure. You can catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech or at hivedigitaltech.com.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, sat123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money, it's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail in hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones, they don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay sovereign. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store.
All right, everybody, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're here with Kent. Kent, first, I want to start it off with what is the current state of the Bitcoin mining industry from your perspective?
Oh, it's a wonderful time to be in mining. Genuinely saying that, right? You guys haven't heard me probably. I'm always bullish on mining. I think it's the best way to stack sats. And I genuinely think it's better Bitcoin too, because on an energy cost averaging basis, so trading your energy bill for Bitcoin, you get more sats for your dollar that way than you could by buying them on exchange. B, you're getting them outside of the banking for surveillance system. And C, you can feel good that you're supporting a Bitcoin company while you're doing that, right? Because we're all a team of Bitcoiners here. So I just think it's better Bitcoin in general. But in general, what's really going on from like a macro scale is that the pubcos are going away from mining. And I think that's good for the mining community at large, right? It's no different than, if you're looking at charts and people sell on the bottom, like it feels like a very similar trade from the pubcos here, right? Like they come into mining from the perspective that they've got to return more dollars to their investors each and every quarter. And they look at AI and say, well, cool. Like right now, we can get more dollars doing AI and HPC, high power compute. And we're going to go do that because we can get more dollars that way, because our fiduciary responsibility is to get more dollars. And we're going to go sell all this equipment that maybe we used a little bit. And so, we've been the benefactor of getting lightly used equipment. It's in great shape. Customers have been loving it. And then on the other side, for the Bitcoin network, that means that these entities that had a large portion, up to about 40% of the hash rate at one point, they are coming down. Their share of the hash rate is coming off the network. And that'll continue to happen over the next 2 years as they deploy their capital into HPC AI data centers, right? And the reason they're able to do this is because they've captured long-term energy contracts. And really, the data centers themselves are not going to be available to transition. Like they've got to tear down, rebuild almost completely. Like, to give some specific numbers to this, I was hearing a range in Las Vegas that to produce 1 megawatt of AI HPC was about $20 million, which is an order of magnitude bigger than Bitcoin mining. And so they're having to invest a ton of capital, and it's going to take a couple of years to do this. And by then, assuming that we're all right, that the cycle is elongating here and turning into a longer cycle, and we're going to be bullish, and Vanguard's right, 160K, I think they're going to be shaking their heads and saying, my gosh, what did we do? We could have made more money sticking with Bitcoin mining, but we pivoted. So I think that's great, because what it means is the fiat hash rate is coming off, and it gives an opportunity for the Bitcoin community to come in and start stacking sats the way that Satoshi designed the network, which is to mine them instead of buy them. And I love where we fit in this, because we have been building for this moment for years now to make this an easy experience for people to onboard. And our software is getting really tight. We just launched a UX revision for how you mine with Ocean that makes it much simpler and easier. And we're just building this layer of infrastructure that hasn't existed. And so in the same way that like the taxis were replaced by Uber, like that's our game, is we want to be, the Uber of the mining industry, to just make it easier to, hop in and get a ride, make it easier to hop in and get your sats from the mining experience. And if we're right, that also means that the liquidity on exchanges is going to continue to disappear, which means that you're going to want to earn your Bitcoin instead of buy your Bitcoin just naturally based on the incentives, because there's less on exchanges. So when it's all said and done, I love where we're positioned. For the first time, the macro economy is saying, oh yeah, that traditional hosting business, the specialization in labor, where there's actually a company that just produces Bitcoin for other people through the mining experience. Maybe that makes a lot more sense than self-mining. Look at all these pubcos, they're going away from it. And so I love it. We're the benefactors. It feels like we've been swimming and paddling for a wave that is finally starting to crest, and we're about ready to catch it and do it on. And we've been propelled this entire time by customers. I mean, most of the investor community has looked at this outside of like the crowdfunding raises we've done. Most of the investor community said, no, the pubcos, this is the way you got to go do it. And we've been saying, no, that's wrong. Specialization of labor says that actually we should be a service. We should do this for other people. And being a service, we can actually provide more value for not only the community, but ourselves in the process. And specialization of labor would say that, like, somebody's going to own the power, somebody's going to own and manage the data center, somebody's going to own and manage the customer relationship, somebody's going to be the benefactor of the Bitcoin on the other end. But that's how things typically work in industries, and it's now starting to play itself out in that way. It's just really gratifying to see after 5 years in the trenches building for Bitcoiners. So I love where we are as a company, and I love the fact that the pubcos are moving away from Bitcoin mining. I think that's good, and I think that there's a wonderful opportunity if you've been interested in mining and participating in the social layer that really protects the Bitcoin network. Like, it's just this great trifecta of win-win-win right now.
I love it. I love it, man. Absolute bars coming from Kent. And yeah, it is quite interesting. Not all of the pubcos, but some significant ones pivoted completely away from Bitcoin mining. Which again, this is the beauty of Bitcoin, right? It for the ones who stay, right, there's that much more Bitcoin that you can mine, right? The difficulty adjustment, provides that incentive, and that's the beauty of Bitcoin, right? Satoshi was an absolute genius the way that he designed it, or discovered it. I don't know how else you want to view it, where he basically created a system that ensured the way that I describe it, Kent, is basically like Satoshi figured out a way to co-opt human greed to ensure that Bitcoin survives into the future, right? And it's amazing because it's an aligned incentive structure where, if you're a miner, you're winning. It protects the network, right? So it's aligned incentives, right? Rather than this, kind of top-down alternative system that really requires like a lot of coercion for it to work, right? So that's one of the beauties of Bitcoin. Now, I do want to go back to one of the things that you were saying. You kind of buried the lead there, Kent, which was that you actually believe that Bitcoin mining is a better way to get Bitcoin. So let's further explore that topic for anybody that perhaps hasn't seen Kent on the show, and this is the first time they're getting exposure to SazMining.com. Which, by the way, if you use shout out Nathan, if you use I'm pulling it up. If you use the Pizza Day deal is live all months. Fresh Pizza gets you I'm saying it with my Miami accent. The Fresh Pizza promo code gets you $150 off any rigs, plus $25 Papa John's gift card. I absolutely love that. That's real, ladies and gentlemen. That's not just Nathan trolling in the chat. That is an actual promo code that you can use right now if you go to SazMining.com. So Kent, going back to the original question, why do you believe that mining is actually a better way to acquire Bitcoin?
Let me address 2 points. So first of all, the fresh pizza is in honor of Laszlo. If you don't know the history, this is a tie to cultural reference for Bitcoin. And so if you're new here to Bitcoin, you need to know this. The first Bitcoin transaction was for a pizza. A guy was willing to trade a pizza for 10,000 Bitcoin, which I think is about, God, I don't want to even think of the number of value that it is, but hundreds of millions, right? At this point, the value of that pizza is. So in honor of that, you know, we're having a little fun here and giving a discount tied to that, along with a pizza card, so you can eat that pizza in memory of John Laszlo and his sacrifice to set a price point for Bitcoin. Now, as far as the pubcos too, you mentioned something that I want to tie into there. So when you come to mining, and this doesn't matter if you're a company, if you're an individual, you come to mining with the idea, and you've already decided whether you consciously think about this with mining or not, of what your money is. And that decision changes the outcome for your experience. It's weird, really weird. It's almost like this quantum effect. And it took me a lot of years to realize this. But if you think that money is Bitcoin, which I do, and most of you probably do as well, then Bitcoin mining is to acquire Bitcoin. If you think your money is dollars, though, you're going to come to Bitcoin mining and try to get more dollars, and you're probably going to have a bad experience, and you're going to have weak hands, and you're going to flush out. I've seen that just over and over again because the Bitcoin network doesn't obey the rules of dollars as much as it just is self-referential for Bitcoin itself. And that's what we've seen with pubcos, in my opinion. So Nico, absolutely right. Not every pubco is making this pivot, but in my opinion, it's the pubcos that are thinking about acquiring more dollars, not Bitcoin, as the primary ones that are moving. Now, why is mining better Bitcoin? So let's go back to first principles when we say this. And I apologize, my German Shepherd is doing some barking outside. Anyway, the reason why it's better Bitcoin is because of the fact that the Bitcoin that is mined is done directly off the Bitcoin network. So you're outside of the banking surveillance system. The other reason why is because Satoshi designed the network to distribute Bitcoin that way. So you are actually doing it the way that Satoshi designed the network. And there's something that just feels great internally about it. It's in the same vein of producing your own solar power. You know, I used to do solar in my previous career, and doing solar, I could always see customers light up when they're producing their own electricity. There's something sovereign and self-satisfactory about creating your own, right? So you get that experience with Bitcoin mining, and you know, it's alignment of incentives, how Satoshi designed it. The last reason I would say is that you're doing it at a cost below what you could buy it for. From an energy bill standpoint, like what you trade your electricity bill, roughly $150 per mining rig. The return of sats, last time I looked, was about 350,000 sats that you were getting. So that put it at an energy cost average about $50,000. Now that doesn't include the hardware. Hardware does change price, but just on a month in, month out basis, like your energy cost averaging into a Bitcoin position at quite a discount to what you could buy your Bitcoin for. So all those reasons make it better. How we actually work, though, if this is your first time tuning in, is unique. So first of all, we're the only company out there that dedicated themselves to a tech platform first before strapping on a data center. Secondly, we're the only Bitcoin company out there that only earns revenue for itself to drive the growth of the business if we produce Bitcoin for our customers. So you come to our website, you pick up a mining rig. We don't have any profit built into that purchase. You pick up a service plan for that mining rig, you know, to tell us, hey, do you want to pay with Bitcoin and get a 5% discount? Do you want to pay with your credit card, not get the 5% discount? You know, we'll cater to however you want to cycle your dollars into a Bitcoin position through mining. But you set that up, you give us your wallet address, and we just make it all nice and simple so the Bitcoin is flowing directly to your wallet. Then how do we actually make money? We make money by taking 15% and instructing the mining pool to split 15% off when it's paid. And that's how we get compensated. So we're totally in aligned with our customers. When our clients' mining rigs go down, we want to get those up and going as quickly as possible because maintenance is part of the game. You are dealing with physical reality here. This is not a software product. This is where electricity meets money, right? Electricity, internet connection, right hardware, money out, right? Like that's the equation. And I think of mining in the same way that we talk about cypherpunks being able to send value in a permissionless way across the ledger. I think of mining itself as hashpunk. You know, it's the ability for anybody with electricity, internet connection, and the right hardware to produce their own Bitcoin as a decentralized money printer. And it's the first time that we've had anything of that nature in 5,000 plus years, right? Everywhere, money has always centralized its creation. So you can actually participate in the means of production of money, which is, it's just mind blowing that we even have this capability. Even 17 years in, I don't think that humanity has woken up to just how crazy that is.
100%. And it's beautiful, right? Because, you know, before it, and you kind of see like the Freudian slip where like you see a lot of the narratives on Bitcoin, they call Bitcoin private money, right? And the reason I despise that narrative is because ultimately anybody can make Bitcoin, right? You literally, as long as you're paying for the infrastructure, the energy, you can mine fresh Bitcoin or wild sats, right? Can you do the same with fiat? No, that's literally called counterfeiting. They have a name for that. Like you go to jail, right? So which one do you think sounds more public and private, right? Where basically it's one entity that is able to essentially print as much as they want, debasing everybody in the process, or the other system where anybody can make it as long as you invest in the electrical infrastructure. It's not free to make, and there's a cap supply on top of it. Which one do you think sounds more public and private to you, right? So I'll leave it at that. Kent, always an honor having you on the show. Guys, they have a special promo going on right now. Go to SazMining.com. Also, if you're not sure about whether mining is for you, book a call with a Bitcoin strategy advisor and ask as many questions as you want. Go to SazMining.com today. You can also send us a DM at simplybitcoin on the Twitter handle. We'll put you in contact with the right people. I want to thank Kent for this awesome merch. I actually got really happy when I saw it because I was like, yes, I get the first Saz merch. So Kent, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Before we wrap up, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor. Guys, this is, speaking of mining, the largest Bitcoin mining conference in the world, Mining Disrupt 2026. It's July 21st through the 23rd in Miami, Florida. Thank God. And you definitely don't want to miss the biggest Bitcoin mining event of the year. If you're trying to get a job in the industry, if you're trying to meet the greats, you definitely don't want to miss Mining Disrupt, July 21st through the 26th, through the July 21st through the 23rd. In Miami, Florida. You definitely don't want to miss it. All the adjacent satellite events. The Mining Disrupt team does a really good job putting this together. I highly, highly recommend it. Again, Mining Disrupt, Miami, Florida, July 21st through the 23rd. We hope to see you guys there. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning into Simply Bitcoin Live. We'll see you on the next one. Go to SazMining.com today. Take care, everybody.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.